Hello well-wishers and welcome to my channel Aspiring Minds. In today's video, we are going to talk about a poem by WB Yeats called Easter 1916. So grab your virtual seats and let's begin. You must be wondering how has suddenly the locale shifted from England to Ireland. That is because William Butler Yeats was an Irish poet and he was one of the most important figures of the 20th century. He was a key figure in the Irish literary movement. He was the co-founder of the Abbey Theatre. His poetry often explores themes about Ireland and the cyclical nature of life. Naturally, a place where you are born and brought up is the place that you've spent most of your time, and you're going to have a lot of experiences to share, which WB Yeats also had, and he does it through his poems. Before we begin decoding the line by line meaning of the poem, let's look at first what is all about the title of the poem. The title suggests Easter 1916. That is, it signifies a specific historical time in which the poem is set. That is, the Easter Rising of 1916 in Ireland. Now, basically, if you see, it was a kind of a rebellion that was taking place at that time in Ireland. And see, you can see the pictures of newspaper clips from that time. Now, this rebellion was taking place, or a kind of a protest. If you don't understand the meaning of rebellion, it was a kind of a protest that was taking place against the British rule. And this particular protest or rebellion was taking place in the month of April and in the year 1916. The poem reflects on Yeats's emotions towards the events and the individuals who were involved in this particular rebellion, including some of his own personal friends. So the rising ultimately led to the execution or the killing of several important leaders also at that time. These leaders became martyrs for the cause of Irish independence. Now, to give you a quick overview before I start decoding the meaning of the poem, the poem basically revolves around the transformation or the change that occurred after this particular rebellion called the Easter Rising. Now, naturally, even when India got its independence, the years before and after 1947, there was a lot of disturbance, turmoil, people were, homeless. Families were broken, so many got killed, so many got displaced. So that same thing had happened in Ireland also at that time. And Yeats talks about how his observation of this whole situation is, he tags it as a kind of a paradox. That is, he says that on the one hand, I should be sad about the tragic death of all these important leaders, but at the same time, he also found and recognized beauty in the situation because the sacrifice of these leaders gave birth to the development of a new understanding of Irish identity. Just as Indians got their identity after independence, the same thing happened in Ireland at that time. Let us now see what does stanza 1 have in store for us. I have met them at close of day coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. So Yeats over here reflects on his meeting with these ordinary people who were involved in the rebellion. He uses a word to describe them, saying that they had vivid faces. This suggests that there was a sense of purpose and passion as they were emerging out of their mundane daily routine of life, and they were all heading towards participating in this rebellion. He then goes on to describe his casual interaction with these people who were going to be a part of the rebellion, acknowledging that he exchanged pleasant thoughts without fully understanding the depth of their, dedication to give Ireland its own identity. He confesses that he initially considered mocking the rebels in the social settings, but later on he realized that instead of mocking or making fun of them, that was not to be done, because ultimately He should be appreciating them because they were all fighting for their cause. He says, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a gibe. So he wanted to mock them, but he does not do that because there is indeed appreciation in what they were doing. He undergoes a realization that their lives, marked by ordinary concerns, had been transformed because of the rebellion. The phrase terrible beauty over here talks about the paradox that exists in the nature of events. That is, there is violence that would have occurred on one hand because of the rebellion. People were genuinely having ordinary simple reasons why they were having the rebellion, but that led to a lot of violence. It became very serious. And what was the beauty of it on the other side? There was the birth of a new consciousness. Of what? Consciousness of developing an Irish identity. Next, in stanza 2, he says that woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew shrill. So here he describes a random ordinary woman whose life was consumed by doing very, small, trivial tasks until she became passionately involved in the rebellion. That is what in those times, even women, they were doing their daily duty. Perhaps if she was a working lady, she was going out for work, or she was doing all the household work, but then her voice started gaining intensity when she participated actively in that Irish rebellion. What voice more sweet than hers when young and beautiful she wrote to harriers? That is, the poet recalls the appealing voice of a woman who in her youth engaged in pleasant activities like riding on the hounds. This man had kept a school and rode our winged horse. So he then introduces two male figures, one a school teacher and accomplished horseman, and the other his assistant, who is growing in strength and influence. So this is what happens when a rebellion is taking place. It could be an ordinary woman who was going about her daily duty, a school teacher, his assistant, all of them stepped out of their daily roles and participated towards attaining that Irish identity. The poet then goes on to reflect on the potential of this assistant to achieve fame because of his sensitive and innovative nature. He contrasts this idealized image of one man with less favorable perception of another who appeared to be ignorant and drunk. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, yet I number him in the song. That is, despite the wrongs committed by this second man, Yeats includes him in the poem, recognizing the complexity of the individuals involved. That is, at that time, in the rebellion, you never know when that person who is a very unimportant kind of a person will become the most important person when the context changes. And what context changed in this case? How the context changed with the rebellion taking place in the background. Now both these men, despite having flaws, mistakes, had undergone a lot of transformation. There was a lot of change that occurred in them because they moved away from the casual and comedy kind of a life to a more serious aspect of life, that is taking part in the rebellion. So basically over here we see once again he says a terrible beauty is born. So he uses example of these men to highlight that if the context changes and when it comes to protecting the identity of one's nation, even a very unimportant, flawed kind of a man can become the most important and resourceful person. So you should not underestimate the power of people. And at the same time it talks about how rebellion can bring about deep, meaningful transformations in people. Now let's look at stanza 3. Hearts with one purpose alone through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. That is, individuals united by a common purpose became like stone, disrupting the flow of the living life. That is, when this rebellion was taking shape, everyone left whatever they were doing, and everyone came together, and they became one strong stone that could not be moved no matter what. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to trembling cloud, minute by minute they change. That is, Yeats observes the constant change in the natural world as well, highlighting that even the natural world was changing with the change in the people that was coming. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim and a horse splashes within it. That is, the poet further tells about the fluidity of life. He uses images of the clouds, the water and a horse to depict that how there was a constant change happening. You will be able to understand it better if you have, if not, of course, some viewers may not be actively old enough to have seen the Indian independence movement, but if you have watched movies, or even a very common simple movie of the army fights that happen, that they have been shown, you could talk about Uri the Surgical Strike and other such movies, you will see that there is a constant change that people are under. You cannot predict what is going to happen to you the very next moment. The long-legged moor hens dive, and hens to moor cocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stone in the midst of all. That is, the moor's hens. Moor is a kind of a grassland, so the hens who were staying over here, their activities were also changing. Even the hens, you can imagine, such unimportant kind of creatures, so to say, even their life was witnessing a change. It was not just the human beings. Yet the stone remains unmoved at the center. Who is this stone? The stone represents that group of people who had come together for the cause of protecting the Irish identity, suggesting that there was a lot of strength that was gathered in becoming one strong stone in the face of this rebellion. Finally, in stanza 4, the poet says, "Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart." That is, he warns that if you are involved in a long sacrifice, it can lead to making people emotionally numb. Their hearts become hard like a stone, possibly talking about how the struggle for independence can take a toll on the emotional and mental health of people. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name. The poet questions that when the sacrifice, when will it be enough? When will it suffice? When will it be sufficient? He suggests that determining this is actually not in the hands of people, but only God can decide what is the extent to which sacrifice of people and their lives is going to be enough. The responsibility of the living is to remember and honor those who have died in the cause of this rebellion, comparing it to a mother murmuring her child's name after they have tired themselves out. What is it but nightfall? No, not night but death. Was it needless death after all? So Yeats over here questions whether the sacrifice symbolized over here by the nightfall, was it at all necessary, or could it have been avoided? I have also told it in the various videos I have made while I was teaching war poetry. There's a video on war poetry separately live on my channel. There are other war poetries also which are live on my channel, like Wilfred Owen's Spring Offensive, Strange Meeting. So you will see that war, rebellion, protest movements, all these were things that were happening in that time of the century, but technically we should do what we are heading towards in today's time, that is, try to peacefully settle the situation instead of indulging in physical fights and rebellions, because it leads to the death of innocent people. Then he goes on to say, "For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead." That is, yet suggests that despite this conflict that was happening, there was still hope for reconciliation with England. There could have been a way of trying to unite with England. The mention of the rebels' dream, even in death, emphasizes the lasting impact of their ideals, their notions. The poet then considers whether an overwhelming love for their own Irish identity was the cause that led to their death. Because even during the Indian independence movement, there were many freedom fighters who lost their lives. They could have just stepped back and got cozy in their houses, but they went outright and they fought for making India independent. And even in today's times, we commemorate and we pay our respects to them on their particular days of the year, right? So then he goes on to give a list of the name of the leaders: MacDonough, McBride, Connolly and Pierce, by immortalizing them in verse. That is, in his own way, Yeats is trying to pay these people respect for having sacrificed their life because of the rebellion or the protest movements that they were involved in. And then he says the closing lines of the poem, that is, it talks about that change that has been brought about by the events of Easter 1916, and this change carries with it the paradox of beauty and tragedy that emerged from the rebellion. Tragedy because of the death and sacrifice of the people, and beauty because of the remarkable change that was seen in most ordinary people who left their daily tasks and all participated actively to make Ireland free. Yeats's Easter 1916 can be understood as the poem explores the simultaneous beauty and horror that arises from the sacrifice of the people, and how it led to the transformation of individuals who were a part of this rebellious movement called Easter Rising. The individuals mentioned in the poem undergo a significant personal change, reflecting on the broader change that would happen in society with the change in these individuals' lives. So we see that Easter 1916 is a complex poem, and Yeats tries to provide us the experience of what people must have felt at that time. The poem talks about the transformative power of sacrifice, the complexity of human nature, and the enduring impact of historical events on individual lives. But ultimately, it leaves the reader with a profound sense of the lasting consequences of the rebellion on Irish identity. So that's it from this video. I hope you liked it. Do hit the like button, subscribe to my channel for more such future updates. Thank you for watching. Bye.